the simplest question in franchising. And Brent and I are going to talk about it coming up next. Where are my leads? Brent, somehow you figured it out, and I assume when you started Raintree and you start working with brands, they're not asking about leads. Like, you skipped over that stage and started asking about deals. But I'm sure when you're looking at how am I going to grow this brand, you're like, where are my leads? So we're going to focus in on 2024 because I think a lot has changed. But your viewpoint on leads, application, deals, and let's just frame like how you would set up a dashboard of success for a brand.
We talked about this yesterday, just chatting, and I think it's changed, right? The definition of a lead has changed, and I think your mentality behind what you're looking for has to change too. So when we set it up, we have interest, we have leads, we have qualified applicants, and we have deals. So the biggest change for 2024, and this was a change that we saw in 2023, is to stop going after the lead initially. And we're talking specifically, Nick, about digital marketing right now. We're not talking about working with consultant networks. We're talking about the multitude of brands out there that want to spend some money somewhere and want to bring some deals in organically, because that's always a big talking point. And so what changed is we stopped sort of saying, here's a long lead form where we're going to ask for your first name, your last name, your state, your phone, how much money you have, what skills you have, what interests you have, a long lead form. We need to just simply provide value. And so the biggest thing that we saw change and will continue to change in 2024 is it's about putting the brand in front of a potential candidate, knowing who the potential candidate is and where they are, but just giving them value first, asking for an email so you can send them value. And that's the interest that we try to generate first. Then once you have that trust built, you have truly provided value and you've piqued their interest, then we can move into collecting a little bit more information and calling them a lead. But that's what's changed. We're no longer in a world, there's too much noise out there. There's too much information readily available for us to now sort of say, give me your details and then I'll give you some information. It doesn't work like that. Unless if you want to be successful in this, of course, it doesn't work like that anymore. What do you think?
Well, I have three categories that I want to ask a follow-up comment to you because I think it helps frame it. So, and I'm curious. I'm not even leading the witness with my first one, but we put a brand that you're connected with, Voodoo, on CNBC, and you texted me and you said leads are coming in. My perspective on a lead that comes directly off of being on national TV is that they're actually not qualified. There's a knee-jerk reaction because they have a fear of missing out that they're going to say, okay, I'm going to become a lead. But in my opinion, a lead takes time to nurture. Like take a seed when you're planting a tree. You might see a little indicator that there's like a little leaf that pops out of the ground, but it's not a fully developed tree yet. So you're like, oh, there's a leaf. It's like, well, it's going to take time for it to blossom. So out of curiosity, when that segment aired for Voodoo, on the quality of those instant ones, was there quality on there or did quality of that impact come later?
Great question. So now we're getting super technical, but what we set up here and what we know works now is no longer a singular approach to working leads as they come in. We have three funnels. We have top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, tofu, mofu, bofu. And so when those leads come in, they have the opportunity to enter mofu or bofu, meaning they have the opportunity to say, here's my information. I want to talk to someone now, which is mofu, or I want to schedule a call and I want to get this going, which is bofu, bottom of funnel. If that doesn't happen, if they come to the website, they either fill out the form and don't respond, or they don't fill out a website, what we do is then retarget them back to Facebook or TikTok or YouTube, where there we sort of say, hey, we'll give you a report on franchising. We just want your email, and we get them to buy in that way. So they had the opportunity, Nick, to either, if they were red hot after seeing that, which a lot of them really were, to go straight into our guys and gals and say, let's talk. Here's my information. I want to get this going. To your point, and I can't remember how long it will be. But to your point, the rest of that and probably the bulk of the eyes and the interest that came to our website after that, that's going to take some time. And there has to be a systematic, strategic marketing plan in place to slowly educate them and build that trust. How long did you say it was for an investment level of ours? Where about $750,000?
Yeah, it's north of a year.
A year for them to sort of, they saw us on CNBC. So we'll be talking to those folks after marketing to them very slowly in about a year.
Yeah,
I think that's true. And I think that's where a lot of brands miss the mark, is just because they didn't go directly to the site and pick up the phone there. There's no strategy in place after that. And that's where the bulk of those leads will come.
So I want to call out what you just said, because I think that's obviously the top, middle, and bottom of the funnel, which it'd be great to hear you have this conversation at a coffee shop and someone hearing tofu, bofu, and mofu. But what I'm hearing though, like, let's go back. I use the term 10 years, but it's probably closer to 2010. So now let's go back 13 years. At that point, we're not talking about that. Like, a lead is a lead is a lead is a lead. Like, there's not this component or this energy around what the lead is. What you just said is so sophisticated, and it's in the weeds. But I would go out and I would go on a limb. I would say 95% of those in franchising heard what you just said and maybe agree with it, but won't do anything about it. It goes right back to lead.
Totally.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And it's because, we have this conversation with brands that we talk to all the time. It's so clear what needs to happen for that brand to go, but there's competing interests. It's hard doing what we all do, right? We not only have to market our brands and sell our brands, we have to run sophisticated customer service businesses and systems and processes and added tech every day to make sure those franchisees are successful. And there's a lot that goes into being a successful franchisor or growing franchisor. And to set up this to this level, yeah, for a lot of brands, they just don't have the talent or the time to make it happen. And I empathize with that. It's interesting, right? Because when you're in it and you see kind of clearly, like, man, if I just could have them set up a little bit of marketing, if I just could have them follow the system, their experience would be so much better. But I don't know. My read, Nick, is that it's just simply time and focus, bandwidth. It's hard to prioritize. What do you see?
Yeah. Yes, it's hard to prioritize. There's also a lack of sophistication, and then there's pressures from the top. And so I think like I was gonna ask you, like, statement one is, when we're saying how do I find leads? Well, make sure you're setting up the infrastructure to facilitate the different levels of candidate that walks in the door. Like, if you think about a burger restaurant, person comes in, one person might want to order a burger, one might want to order fries, one might want to order a shake. They're all potential customers when they walk in that door, but their experience is going to be different, or what they want out of it. And so we're so one-dimensional. But the reason that happens is the pressure from the top. I've been in these meetings where the CEO goes, okay, how many leads do we have? I was like, yeah, but what? Like, if I had 100 people that I had to talk to for our businesses before we can sell, like, there's no way I would be able to operate the business. Like, it'd be a waste of time. And I think that's where, like, there's most brands haven't set up a true understanding of what selling a franchise is. We almost treat it like we're selling a pack of gum. And that's unfair to the sales team. And so the sales team is not wrong by talking about, here's where my leads, here's the number of leads that I have. And they're not wrong on chasing down 100 that won't buy, because activity in franchising sometimes keeps your job longer. But if you were to look at the turnover of a salesperson in franchising, it should not be that high, because we're in the business of selling people to people, and that's culture. And when there's turnover on the person that's selling you on moving your life savings into this business opportunity, and they turn over, like, there's a trust factor that continues to go off. So what I'm saying is, like the KPI model hasn't been set up properly by the leadership of the organization. And therefore, we're always looking at false indicators, which doesn't allow someone to get out of the day-to-day weeds and say, let me build a process on how we navigate these candidates. Does that make sense? Made
It
sense in my
does.
head.
Yeah, it does. That's true. And I also think, in addition to that, there's too much talk about focus and priority, too much on lead and not enough on deal.
Right.
You only need one lead for a deal. That's the truth, right? And so there can be false perceptions of, well, I know I need 100. Like, you probably still hear it to this day. It makes me kind of shake my head when I hear it, but I'm told I need 100 leads for a deal. That is the most strange statement that I continue to hear every day that I just can't find the logic in. But it seems to be a common one. And I think it sets a lot of brands up for failure.
Okay, so take that, because this goes to the next point that I want to say off of your opening statement. When I'm thinking about the way that you've constructed what is a lead and the different forms of leads, and at what point in the funnel is that lead, like someone that fills out a form that doesn't respond is quickly dismissed as a cold lead, when they could have just been, in your words, a tofu. They could have just been totally at the top. They don't want to have any information or conversation with you. They filled it out either as a knee-jerk reaction, or they assumed they were going to get some sort of information packet that they didn't get. And so now when the salesperson goes email, call, text, they're like, wait a second, like, I'm not ready for this. And nobody even took the second to say, may I take your order? And they may have said, I just want the fries now. Don't sell me the burger yet. And so there's a lack of there. But when you're talking, I was like, I think back to some of the conversations you and I have had on the portals, and you said, look, the portals actually did well. But is that for you in the last year? But is that because you changed your perception? Like, everybody's perception is like, look at all these tire kickers. You classify a tire kicker differently. So is that because you changed your viewpoint on what the lead is that helped you see the value in it, versus, like, I mean, you're getting deals off of it, but you're not dismissing it as a broken tool because people are coming in at various stages?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that allows the Raintree team to have success is the focus on messaging. Here's the biggest problem in franchising. Here's where there's unsophistication. It's such a hard sell, and every brand is focused on themselves. It's the messaging when you get on those portals or their website is, look at me, look how good I am, look, I'm on entrepreneurs list. Here's the truth. Nobody cares. You have to solve problems. This is not a sell. This is, you really have to understand what problem you're solving and who specifically you solve it for. And that messaging has to speak to them. It has to be about the viewer, the reader, the potential lead, and not about you. And when you can craft your story, how you solve problems with your franchisees, and how that might help this person who's scrolling, yeah, they're going to click more. They're going to be more interested. You're already cut through the noise. And I think that's the biggest mistake I see from franchise brands. Again, nobody cares what list you're on, what awards you have, even what AUV you have. You have to frame it in the right way. And when you can do that, the outcome changes significantly.
Yeah, I love that. Another thing that in your opening statement, I'm thinking about what is the fake lead today. And in my opinion, the fake lead today is the territory check from the broker. Like, I've heard brands are like, man, we have 80 territory checks. I'm like, great. And how many candidates have you spoken with? Well, none. Like, I'm not sure that channel's working for you yet. Or if you've had 80 territory checks, none have turned into a candidate, then you're also missing the opportunity to give the franchise broker, consultant, coach the tools to actually move that candidate over. And so are you taking a good look in the mirror? Which ultimately, like, that might be entered as a lead if there was a territory check. But if the person never comes to fruition to have that discussion, that might not be someone that you're ever gonna talk with. So I think back to some of the opening remarks that you're saying. If you take the insight that you failed, that you missed 80 opportunities because the lead from a territory check or from a portal or from your website didn't materialize into anything, that's where you push that pause button and go back and say, what's my messaging? What's my process here? And what's my approach to getting these folks to have a warm conversation that they're not being sold, that I'm helping facilitate the discussion with. Does that connect?
It does, yeah. And I mean, the territory checks is a good example. Like, if we're looking for leads and you have a ton and why you're not getting any, that is the opportunity to understand why. And I think a lot of brands confuse, like, if you're actively seeking consultant leads, it's different than obviously marketing yourself online. and it's a different customer. You have to understand how to market to that broker and how to educate them better. Obviously, if they're interested but no one's getting through, there's a disconnect there. Just like there could be a disconnect in the messaging as to why you're not getting people to convert on your website.
Yeah.
And there's certainly indicators, and I think that's a great point you raised there, whether it's consultants or online leads. So many brands are quick to blame the channel. It's usually the first place they'll go of, well, Facebook suck, or portals suck, or TikTok sucks, or this broker group sucks. Maybe, but most times you haven't got your messaging right. You haven't spent the time understanding your ideal franchise owner, how they think, what motivates them, how to find them, and put all that work into messaging. And that's where brands usually skip that step, that end up spending the next 3 to 5 years blaming channels and then exiting as a franchisor because they never did that work.
Well, you also, like what you just said, like if I go backwards in our conversation today and we were talking about CNBC hits, and you said immediate reaction, great. And then you didn't say, it's going to take me a year to talk to the next round of them. You're like, okay, in a year from now, we're going to still be talking with people that came from it that materialized. The patience side to lead generation ends up being the probably the hardest thing. And I've said this before. You could go spend 20 grand today, deploy it all on LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, and Google, deploy it and get 0 for the next 30 days. And you're going to say, I got gypped off. I spent 20 grand and I got nothing. And then a year from now, all of a sudden someone's going to knock on that door and say, hey, I saw an ad and I started doing my homework. I wasn't ready for it, but I'm just reaching out because I'm interested in talking now. And so a year later, you've already fired whoever bought that ad campaign. You said it didn't work because you didn't understand how the timeline and the funnel works. So whether it's $10,000 or it's $100,000, if I said two things, Brent. One, how would you deploy it without diving into the brand, obviously, how would you structure deployment, whether it's $1 or it's $100,000 into lead generation? And follow-up question, and I think even more important, which you could answer first, is how do you know when it's time to pull the plug on whether that part of your lead generation is working or not?
Good question. It's easier for us because we have the advantage of a multitude of brands to test with, and we can kind of see trends, and we have historics, and we know, look, loosely speaking, Facebook may not yield a return for the first 6 months, but we know it works out. And so we have those indicators, which makes it easier. If you're a brand sitting there and you're like many of the brands that will spend 30 days advertising on X channel, how do you know whether you should wait another 30 or 60 or 90 or a year or not? And that's really tricky. I think that you've got to set up the indicators as you suggested at the start of this, Nick. You've got to have your interest, your leads, your applicants, and your deals. And when we had a brand come into Raintree, we tell them, we help ourselves by saying, do not expect, you'll start paying money, say January 1. Do not expect to see anyone at approval or a confirmation day until at earliest July. We might get busy in Q3. And that's the truth. And so that's the kind of us setting up brands to sort of say, it takes minimum 6 months for us to figure out what makes it work here. And it's a little bit different every time. So there's not a one size answer of here's what we recommend for this type of brand. We have a slew of maybe 20 different channels we'll try. And again, we got indicators, but we do know this. You got to wait. You got to be patient in this game. We talk about that all the time, Nick. You got to put yourself in the shoes of the franchise buyer. You're either scrolling and you kind of maybe see something, you see a PR article on franchising, and then maybe you go to a portal, or you're scrolling and you see an ad on Facebook. The thought that someone's going to see that, be so intrigued by your Franchise 500 ranking on Entrepreneur that they're going to want to all of a sudden give you their life savings and then the small fortune they'd have to buy to do that. Sign a 300-page agreement that's heavily weighted against them and trust the next 10 years of their career and their family into a group of people they've never really met before, except maybe at a confirmation or a discovery day. Come on, it's not going to happen. And you have to have a long game view. So, that's a very long-winded answer of me kind of dodging it a little bit because it's true. It's going to be different to every brand, but I do know this. Anywhere from 30 days to 6 months is the time frame where you really want to give these leads and your channels times to mature to understand, are you going from interest to lead to candidate to deal? Are there trends looking positive or not? And going from there. What do you see?
So on the quitting front, so I'll give a real scenario without saying the brand. There's a brand that you and I work with that wanted to pull the plug. Your response was, well, wait a second. All the people that are excited about buying, like, this is impacting them pulling the plug. And the tactic that we're talking about in that scenario is traditional PR. Like, let's just build the buzz around the business. We've had brands say digital is not working, so we're going to fire you from there. And I've said, okay, but you got to understand in perspective, when you're spending $1,000 on Google, $1,000 on Facebook, $1,000 on LinkedIn, that's $3,000 a month. And cost per deal through a broker could be somewhere between $30,000 and $100,000 that you're going to pay commission for. And you're going to say that this doesn't work after 3 or 6 months of doing it. Understand, at 6 months, you still haven't spent what I told you your cost per deal was going to be, which is $25,000. At $25,000, most likely you're still less than what you would pay the broker network. And so when it comes to pulling the plug, I think the patient side is really lost on a lot. And part of that is the jealousy factor. And LinkedIn does a great job of creating the jealousy factor. When you see other brands just selling, you're like, well, why can't I do that? The other issue that exists is brands don't say, let me look behind our curtain, the curtain of our brand, and say, how's the construct of our business opportunity? What's our cost to get in? How much can you make? Do we have a clear point of differentiation in the marketplace? Do we have a game plan for how we're going to grow and support our franchisees above everybody else? And do we have the validators that are saying, yes, everything that they said in the sales process aligned with what my expectations were? And when some of those start having chinks in the armor, brands rarely look backwards and say, well, it's me, not you. And they blame everything else for not working. My advice is this: if you're going to get into franchising and you're going to commit to growing your franchise, whether you're going to spend $1 or you're going to spend $1 million on it, you got to commit and you got to stay the course and you got to keep it going. Franchising is like a locomotive. The second it stalls, it takes time, energy, money to get those wheels going again. And it's really, really tough. Like, I've seen killer brands with tremendous momentum halt it and never return back to that momentum that they had. Like, the sexiness factor wears off. So when is the time to pull the plug? I mean, one, I pull the plug fast if you haven't perfected the business opportunity. Like, don't spend a ton on lead generation. You're going to be tough. Now, the last thing that I want to say on that is, Brent, if I said option one is you're going to spend $10,000 on Facebook, and obviously you can pick the demographics. Let's say 35 to 54-year-olds. We'll put it in the top 10% of net earners so that you're at least putting a financial restraint on it, who live in the markets that you want to grow in. So you've narrowed this down, and you're going to buy an ad campaign on Facebook. Or the second option is a stadium full of people who just rave about your product, who love it. Like, they're fans, they come back, they're loyalists to your business. Do you buy the Facebook ad, or do you buy the message in front of a stadium that has your loyalists?
You buy both, because you get that stadium and then you need 12 months of marketing after to make sure that they don't forget.
Okay, that's good. The point is, like, I think in lead generation, the biggest miss by brands is they don't go back and look at the audience that they already control, which is within their four walls. And you have people every day that are coming into your retail brick and mortar, and you have people every day that are using your brand service. No matter what, it's a business, you're selling something to someone. And so you have all these touch points with those people that you're selling something to someone. And typically the message that comes by is franchising. But it goes back to what the magic was in your funnel, is that you're giving them the report on franchising specific to that brand. And so you're skipping over, in my opinion, what Brent said is the most important part of this piece is education, the tools to give the franchisee to understand what franchising is, And then you attach back to people that already love your brand. Like that's the pathway of least resistance. 84% of your deals are going to come from people 1 degree separated. You're going to spend a lot of money chasing down the 16%, but the 16% is vital to getting your growth going, an introduction to people that are looking to get into the space. So it's not, don't dodge it. I agree with you, Brennan, do both. But I think it's very important that you want to find your leads in 2024. Sometimes it will cost you not one dime. It just it goes back to Brent's message of proper messaging to the right people. And sometimes they're right in front of you. You're not asking them the right question, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's true. It's so important. We're all seemingly skipping over some of the key points. And the first one is spending time doing that. What does that actually mean? We redid it for ourselves at Raintree at the start of 2023. We spent 8 weeks combing through generic sentiment, or general sentiment, I should say, on franchising, looking at the list of franchise owners, trying to really understand what made them tick, what worked, what didn't, surveys, questions. It was intensive. And we had a great year last year. And I attribute it to the work that the team did in taking a minute to really understand our audience, our dream buyer, and making sure that messaging was solid before we just went out and started trying new channels. And I think that's the biggest advice I can give people right now, based on what we're seeing, is you really spent enough time crafting your message, helping people solve problems, and knowing who those people that fit into your franchise are. If you do that, you'll see that leads will naturally start to come to you a little bit. You won't have to go find them as much.
The funny thing is that last statement, even though it's 100% correct, brands are going to hear that, and it's going to go in one ear and out the other. And 12 months from now, they're going to come back and say, I didn't get the leads that I expected. And if you go to your website right now, if it says franchising, you don't have a message. Like, you don't have one. Go fix that. Do that as step one. Stop spending money. Fix some of those things, and then perhaps you win at lead generation in 2024. So good conversation. Look, we have a great momentum. Charles, stay off these where you've been kicked off of FranX. That's how it goes. It's FranX.